Hi, and welcome to the Katie Truther podcast. I'm your host, Katie Truther. Today, I'll be speaking with Booker Scott from The Truth Be Told on America Out Loud. He is a longtime political commentator and a good friend of mine. I'm so excited to have you on the show today, Booker. How are you? Thanks for
I'm
coming.
great, Katie. It's good to finally catch up and be here. We have tried a couple of times, but thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Yeah, I am on America Out Loud Talk Radio. That is Monday through Friday at 6 o'clock Eastern Time, 3 o'clock Pacific. And America Out Loud, you may not have heard about it, but let me tell you a little bit about it. It's americaoutloud.news or .com. Either one of those will work. Let me share some names of some people that are on there that have shows also that you may not be aware of. Dr. Peter McCullough, of course, from COVID fame. There is Dr. Harvey Risch. In addition to that, we have, if you remember, Randy Sutton, who gave the salute to Donald Trump during the RNC convention in that speech on a Wednesday night. He also has a show there. Trevor Loudon from New Zealand. You may recognize that name. Tony Schaefer, a former military intelligence gentleman that you see on Newsmax a whole lot. He also has a show there. Nurse Jody O'Malley, one of the first whistleblowers during COVID. She has a show Monday through Friday. It's called Nurses Out Loud at 10 o'clock. And attorney Tom Renz up in Pennsylvania, his show is on every afternoon at 3 o'clock. In addition to the talk radio side, which you can hear on iHeartRadio and Spotify, as well as on your smart TV and Alexa and Apple Play, it's available there live. You can also go to americaoutloud.news for additional podcasts that you don't hear on the radio side of things. And there are also articles. So really smart people there besides me that do program shows and write articles. In addition to that, I also write all of the breaking news on America Out Loud Talk Radio. So that's kind of what I do during the week and other things as well. But I stay busy doing that. The show, what I try to do is a little bit of yeah, it's politics, but it's also cultural, societal. I try to have, informative guests, and I've been fortunate to have some really good ones through the last year and a half, over a year and a half. Just celebrated having 200 shows on the network last week, and it was, it's a lot of work, as you know. A lot goes into doing an hour that a lot of people don't probably realize. They think we flip on a mic and go, but you have to find out the guests that you're going to have. You have to coordinate that, but that's a whole other story. But that's what we do at America Out Loud Talk Radio, and again, a lot of smart people there, and it's really designed for, it's not mainstream media. And when I do my shows, I do a lot of politics, but I also a couple of weeks ago I had a very interesting show, and it was a man that transitioned to a woman and stayed a woman for 30 years, but then was actually baptized as a woman. But as he grew in his spirituality and reading in scriptures and continuing to go to church, he realized that he had to repent, and he actually went through the process of having surgery again and changing his social security, and ended up getting baptized so that he could look at the pastor that had baptized him as a woman, not knowing that she was a woman, as a Christian brother. And so that's sort of a cultural type of story I may tell in on the show. And additionally, let's see, Beneath Sheep's Clothing is a really interesting documentary that just came out. And last week I had the person that wrote that book and then directed that film. She was a guest, and she kind of takes you through what is going on in this country right now with Marxists and how we are marching our way to socialism. So I try to inform people with smart people. I don't know much. I just try to ask questions.
Same, Booker. Absolutely the same. I am a variety podcaster. This journey, I've covered all kinds of topics, and like you said, it's a lot of work coordinating and getting things together. Now, you do something that I have yet to do, which is podcast or record alone. I have not done that yet, other than small videos for social media. But as far as doing an episode on my own, I've not crossed into that just
Yeah.
yet. So maybe that's coming with being able to stream a bit more. But wow, some phenomenal guests. The detransitioner, I suppose we would call it. That's wonderful, and that is a story of, honestly, of hope and inspiration, and something to say
Absolutely.
like people can change. People, faith can move people. Faith can move mountains. To be honest with you, and that's just absolutely incredible. And I'm looking forward to checking out. What did you say it's called? Underneath the sheep's clothing.
No, beneath sheep's
Beneath.
clothing. And let me tell you a couple of people that are in that documentary. James Lindsay is in that, and also Trevor Loudon. Both of them are in that documentary. And there's also a book, Beneath Sheep's Clothing. The writer of that is Julie Beeling. And I've had interesting guests like Corey Mills, Representative Corey Mills from Florida. I've had Dr. Carol Swain. And one of my favorites was Dr. Sheldon Roth. And I don't know if you know him or not, but he's 85 years old now. He wrote the book Psychologically Sound: The Mind of Donald Trump. And he was a Harvard professor, and he is the one that actually taught psychiatrists for about 45 years there. He spent time in Russia as well. But he was really just enjoyable to hear, an 85-year-old man that spent his life in academia and in training psychoanalyst, to hear him talk about Donald Trump's mind and the psychologically sound Donald Trump mind. So that was another good one. And then Michael Johns, who founded the Tea Party, he's also been a guest a couple of times on the program. Juanita Broderick, I found out that Juanita Broderick, the last show that she was on was mine, which was about a year and a half ago. I found that out from her a couple of months ago, and I kind of take it maybe as an honor, but then maybe I said something that made her not want to go on anyone else's show. But and Julie Kelly, I've had Julie Kelly on. I have had the longest held Jay Sixer from the Washington D.C. Gulag on the program 3 different times. So it's a variety of things, but mainly it's in politics. It has to do with politics. And you mentioned doing an hour by yourself, and it can get lonely. It really can get lonely because you are by yourself. I don't have any initial feedback. I don't have someone looking at me, nodding their head in agreement. I'm just going. And hopefully it's received by those that listen and understand what the message is that I'm trying to put across. Because typically I'm trying to put something across, but I want to lead people to a place for them to make their own decisions. I'm not a jump up and down and rant and rave person. I want to present the story, the evidence, and allow people to come to the conclusion that they would come to.
Yeah, that's an awesome thing. So you guys make sure you check out the show with Booker Scott. That's going to be The Truth Be Told on America Out Loud News Radio. Oh,
Yeah, talk radio. It's
talk
America.
radio.
Yeah, it's confusing, but you can go to americaoutloud.news, and when you go there, there's a place you can click a button, and there's also an app, which is available in both stores. You can download the app, and then you can listen to it 24 hours a day because it is 24-hour a day radio. And additionally, there are the articles and other podcasts that are not on the radio side of it. So there is radio 24 hours a day, 365 days a year on America Out Loud Talk Radio, but on AmericaOutloud.news, there are additional articles and additional podcasts that you can find there.
Yeah, I love the app. Very useful, especially for being a podcaster myself, trying to keep up with some information. A lot of great people on that network, and especially you, Booker. I always love when you do Pulse of the People, which we've kind of talked about. That might be continuing or might not be continuing as frequently, but that can be found on X Spaces. That's a lot of fun to participate in. So I've been on Booker's show several times now
Yeah.
through using X Spaces. And, I think it's really great. And Booker, I just want to say you have such a talent for what you do. I know you said you don't have any, feedback right away, but once you put it out, kind of the numbers don't lie, the people don't lie. You're doing a fantastic job, and coming from a very common sense place, like you said, not super emotional, which sometimes that could be very entertaining. Not everybody needs to be as calm as you are, but the way you present the present the information is definitely fantastic. So, thank you for sharing all that with me. And you guys be sure to go check out that episode. I'll link everything for Booker Scott down below, and maybe you guys can connect if you're interested in following Booker. Definitely. So, this month for me has been all about voter action. I've talked with several different I want to be careful. I don't want to put everybody in one character, but we'll just say political commentators, right? People that are in the know of what's happening politically, people who are politically involved as far as being active for citizens. So we've talked about poll working, poll watching, getting involved, whether it's door knocking or talking to people at the grocery store, being a committeeman, running for school board. And we want to finish strong. So I know that you have a program organization called Save Your Republic, and I am participating and sharing some of that content for Save Your Republic. So tell us a little bit about your organization and what you guys have going on currently as we are quickly approaching the 2024 elections.
Yeah, and I have done the same thing as you just mentioned. I've had a lot of people on my show that are about strategies and what people can do because that's what it comes down to. And I've even apologized and said that everything wrong in this country is my fault. And the reason why is because I didn't do anything for 25 or 30 years. So please accept my apology. Prior to the 22 midterm, I guess it was in maybe March of 2022. I understood that we needed conservative poll workers. And I don't want to be redundant because you've had a lot of guests that maybe have gone over this. But in poll workers, there's a difference between a watcher and a worker. And it's really important to understand the difference. A poll watcher is assigned by either the party or a candidate. A poll worker is hired by your county and by the election person in your county that's in charge of that. So it's very important to understand the difference. As you remember back to the 2020 election, and let's go to Fulton County just as an example, you had poll watchers that were being kicked out. Specifically, if you remember, a pipe allegedly broke in State Farm Arena in Fulton County. And because of that, according to somebody, there was a leak and they had to clear the building. So they kicked watchers out and they left the workers there to continue to count ballots all night. And if you go to Detroit, if you remember people putting things up on the window, well, those were poll workers, not the watchers. So there was a big difference. And what I found out was that most of the poll workers, especially in Fulton County, they were all Democrats. So I thought, well, we need conservatives in there. It needs to be even. It's really supposed to be even. It should be even. Why does Fulton County have almost 100% of their poll workers as Democrats? It would be an easy way to steal an election if somebody wanted to do that. So that's what made me start thinking of SaveYourRepublic.org. I didn't know what it was at the time, but in just a few days, I bought SaveYourRepublic.org, and then we went to work, and it took about 4 months out of our lives, me and two other people, and we linked over 5,000 links across the country. And there's a map. If you go to SaveYourRepublic.org, there's a map of America. You click on the state that you work in, and then click on your county, and your application to become a poll worker is there. And prior to the 22 midterm, General Flynn found out about it, and he posted it on Truth Social, and it really took off. It had over 2 million unique visitors in just about 4 months there. So now we've moved forward to this election. And as I look at the election, one thing that is not being talked about near enough are the Senate races. And let's just we'll assume for a minute, and I have some thoughts on this too. Let's assume that Donald Trump wins the election November 5th, and he goes in January 20th, 2025. If he doesn't have the control and the power in the Senate, the Republicans, to make sure that the right people are put in place within his administration, then we can expect nothing different other than executive orders. So really, to have accountability for all the things that we've seen with the weaponization of the Department of Justice, and some people right now are talking, well, Donald Trump wants retribution. I don't want retribution, but I want people held accountable for the things that they did that they shouldn't have done that was illegal. And the only way to do that is to get the right, obviously, attorney general. I could argue that going back to Donald Trump's first term, the biggest mistake he ever made was making Jeff Sessions his attorney general from Alabama, the senator from Alabama. I appreciate the fact that Donald Trump was loyal to Jeff Sessions because Sessions was the first senator to come out and support Donald Trump. But if you remember back in that history, he also recused himself from anything to do with Russia. If we had a strong attorney general at that time that said, I have no reason to recuse myself over Russiagate because all I did was go to a cocktail party and the ambassador to Russia happened to be there. That's no reason for me to recuse. We probably would have never had a Mueller investigation because when he stepped aside, that allowed Rod Rosenstein to then appoint a special prosecutor in Mueller, and then we know the rest of the story past there. So if we want to, not have someone weak like Jeff Sessions, let's say we have a Ken Paxton, or I don't know if you're familiar with Eric Schmidt, who is now a senator from the state of Missouri. He used to be the attorney general in Missouri, and he would be an incredible attorney general. But he is never going to be confirmed if the Republicans only have 51 senators, because you have Susan Collins in Maine and you have Lisa Murkowski in Alaska. Neither one of them are going to confirm anyone like Eric Schmidt or Ken Paxton. So in order to get the right people in the right places, and let's say someone like Matt Whitaker in the FBI as the director of the FBI, that's never going to happen with 51 Republican senators. So that number has to get to 53. So what we're doing under the banner of SaveYourRepublic.org is we had a research team that identified 3 key Senate races that are flippable, because in this election, the Democrats are defending 24 seats. The Republicans are only defending 10. Of those 10, there are 2 that maybe are questionable. I believe that both of them are safe in Governor Rick Scott, former Governor Rick Scott in the state of Florida, and Ted Cruz, who's getting a little pressure in Texas. Other than those 2 races, the 10 that the Republicans are defending are solid. They're not going anywhere. Of the 24 Democrats that are defending their seats, most of them are okay too. It really comes down to about 7 or 8 toss-ups. And of those 7 or 8, our team identified 3 that can be flipped.
Oh, that's
And
awesome.
now, and then
Let me,
what we did, yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to ask about Texas. So Ted Cruz, who is there? There's a prominent Democrat running against him. Is there another Republican running against him,
No,
or both?
it's a Democrat in both Florida and in Texas. But like I said, I really don't think, I think Ted Cruz is going to win. It's just there's a little bit more pressure there than maybe what he would like. And I think Rick Scott will win too. So the Republicans will hang on to those 10 seats. And then it comes down to 6 or 7 flippable seats for the Republicans. If there was an opportunity for a red wave, it's this year, not in 2022. And I don't even like to talk about a red wave, but the opportunity is there. So our team did research from the perspective of the undecided voters within that state. So we dug down to find out what in the state of Montana undecided voters want, what it is that they would look for in a candidate. And that's what we make our graphics for our advertising to do, is reach them, not the right. We don't care about the right. We know how they're going to vote. In the state of Montana, for example, it's a plus 8 to 10 point win for Donald Trump. So now you have a Democrat in John Tester who is running for his 3rd time in the Senate, but this is the first time he's ever run in a presidential cycle, which means in the state of Montana, he's going to have a hard time. Well, the guy he's running against is Tim Sheehy, who now is actually leading in that poll. And before I get too far into the other 2 that we are helping, West Virginia is an open seat because Joe Manchin is getting out of there. That seat is going to be won by a Republican. So right now you have the power in the Senate at 50-50 because Justice is up by 40 or 50 points. It's a no doubt he's going to win. So Sheehy would put that number at 51, which would give control of the Senate to the Republicans. But that's not enough. As I said, you have to get to 53. So the other 2 that we are working on is going to be Bernie Moreno in Ohio, and then Mike Rogers in the state of Michigan. And with both of them, just like Sheehy in Montana, our research team, they went in and looked at the undecided voters. We're looking for those 3 or 4%, and we want to do enough to make a difference. And then collectively, what we're trying to do is a lot of different people on social media to push those messages out. And I believe that together, harnessed together with the same message, which we are doing every day and have been for over 2 months now, and will continue until November. I believe that we have the power of a political action committee, because I believe the digital impact in money, if you figure $1,000 per thousand, is going to be more than $4 million that we will provide from the grassroots in a matter of 4 or 5 months for these candidates that know what we're doing, but they have no control over us. This is something we've all done on ourselves, on our own.
Yeah, it's so impactful when people really get in motion, and I love to see it. I really do. So many people are kind of talking about different aspects, like you said, like sharing the flyers, and that sparks conversation. So, if any of our listeners heard us mention the areas that you live in, or if you want to help out, if you want to help get the information out, just reach out to me or Booker, and you could just simply help by sharing, getting a little bit informed, so that way you know how to talk to people, because at the very least that's what we could be doing, right? Having a conversation in the grocery store or at church or at a restaurant or whatever it is, that really is the bare minimum, but it's also extremely impactful. I find when I'm out in public, people seem to be chomping at the bits to talk politics, whether it's in the checkout line, and surprisingly enough, I'm very seldomly the one to initiate the conversation. All it takes is that cashier just scanning and the price going up, and she's scanning and it's going up. And then before you know it, they're like, oh man, these prices are insane, and da da da. And then the conversation just happens. So you just have to put yourself in a position to be a good listener, right? And be ready to have this conversations instead of just complaining. We can take action. And that's what I always try to convey with people, is that local elections, your state elections matter. And I think they matter far more than these, federal elections. Oh, just the president. Like, we have to make sure that we're stacking things in line. So I really like the attention to detail that you brought with that conversation. Thank you so much, Booker. So you guys can check that out at Save Our Republic. Save Your Republic, Our Republic.
Save your
Your
republic.
Save
And
Your
actually,
Republic.
yeah, that's if you want to be a poll worker, go to saveyourrepublic.org. But if you see any of the graphics going around with those three candidates, you'll notice in the bottom right it will say SYR, which is the logo for Save Your Republic. So when you see that, that is us. And if you want to join us, we need all the help we can get between now and November. So we would love to have more people. So please reach out to either one of us, KT or myself.
Yeah, definitely. And you guys make sure you reshare this broadcast. If people can catch it on the replay, the more people that hear the information, the better. All the links for Booker will be below, as well as myself. And I think both of us are pretty accessible. Just drop us a comment with our tag in it, right? We're always checking the notifications. Who said what? Who needs something? Hello, I'm here. How can I help you? Right? Okay, so thank you again for all that information, Booker. And then moving into talking about the presidential election, there's been some things that have happened recently. I would like to get your hot take on the RNC. That was a little while ago, but the Republican National Convention, right? Give me a quick hot take on what is your overall thoughts of that, the RNC, and Donald Trump's message and his attitude towards talking to the Americans. Is there something you wanted to see more or less of for the RNC?
Yeah, I let's go back to right before the RNC, the Saturday before, when the assassination attempt was.
Yeah.
You I think there was a wonderful opportunity there going into that week, because I believe that a lot of people were going to be watching, and especially watching the speech that Donald Trump gave. And I was a little bit disappointed, honestly. It was, to me, it was pretty long, and I believe that he had an incredible opportunity to say, we all have defining moments in our lives. Yeah, sometimes it may be the birth of a child, it could be a wedding. There are defining moments for us as individuals. There are defining moments for our country. And what happened Saturday is a defining moment in my life. And I know I can be a little bit brash. And I want to apologize for that, because it's time for us to come together to make a defining moment for America. Here's how we're going to do it. I would have loved to hear something like that and be about 20 or 25 minutes long and walk off and drop the mic. Eh, but I think the overall message of the Republican convention, it was good. It was about unity, and that's fine. But then you have to look at what happened after. What happened after was the elites of the Democrat Party kicked Joe Biden out, which is something we all knew. I think the first time I wrote an article about it was January 17th, 2023. I said the Democrats are done. He will not be the nominee. So a year and a half before, and I wasn't alone at that time. So we knew this was coming, and then it happened. And then they throw in Kamala without a vote. And from there, I think Donald Trump and his campaign, they were a little discombobulated. And I can't blame them. If you're targeting Joe Biden, everything you're doing is about the things that he's done, and now all of a sudden the team's changed. Well, it's going to be a little bit. I think I don't hold that against anybody there. But then the DNC had their convention, and I think sort of the same thing just happened to them. Hardly anyone remembers the RNC at this point, and hardly anyone really remembers the DNC because RFK decided to support Donald Trump, and that took the wind out of the sails for the Democrats coming out of their convention. So I think where we are right now is flat level. It's a race to the finish. What do we have? 60 plus days now, and here we are. That's where we are, and I say this repeatedly, and I believe that it will happen. And even Kamala Harris said it in her interview Thursday night on CNN that she hasn't changed, and she hasn't. And we have to remember what she was 5 weeks ago, and that was the least popular vice president that there has ever been. And if you go back to when she ran for president in 2019 and 20, she was terribly unpopular. She's not someone people like. She said it Thursday night, I have not changed. She's telling you what she is and who she is. I think in time, as time goes along here, that the stench of Kamala Harris is going to come back to her. She can't hide that forever, although they're trying really, really hard. They're keeping her away from interviews and from answering reporters' questions. They want to control the debates, and how many debates are we going to have? Just one? And I think it's good if they have this debate on September 10th that the mics will be muted. There is no audience. There are no notes for either one of them, just like what Joe Biden and Donald Trump did back in June. It's going to be pretty much the same rules. And I think that exposes her more than it does Donald Trump, because Donald Trump can think on his feet and respond. Kamala Harris is a train wreck when she gets off script. And when someone's not writing for her what to say, we're going to get, time or whatever, one of those crazy word salads that we're used to getting from her. So I think we're level, we're flat level, we're getting close to a point where I think Pennsylvania starts early voting in about 30 days. So it's right here. Everything that we've talked about. And you mentioned the presidential, I call it the big shiny ball because that's all we ever want to talk about. But I think you bring up some great points about local elections, because that's where the true difference is made. The school board, the county commission, the city commission, your city mayor. You see what's happening in Aurora, Colorado right now, which happens to be, by the way, a Republican city, but it's also close to Denver, which is a sanctuary city. So you have these Venezuelan gangs that are now taking over apartments. And it's something that we've talked about for 2 or 3 years now, since this illegal immigration has been going on. It's just a matter of time. Yeah, they're going to blue cities, but they're going to leak out of there, and they're going to this kind of stuff is going to happen in your neighborhood. And here we have it going on. And when it comes down to the election, in reality, to me, it comes down to gas and groceries and guns and the border. And that's the messaging I think that Donald Trump has to stay on. Get off of the skin color of Kamala Harris, because that's not going to go anywhere. Get off of abortion, get off of all of those social and cultural ideas, because the thing that matters to the American people at their kitchen table is how much money do they have at the end of the month when their paychecks are done and they still have some month left. And it's costing American families $12,000 to $13,000 more a year to live now than it did 4 years ago. And that's the message. And that's what people care about. But they also have to understand why it happened. And that's the scary part when you get Kamala Harris and Tim Walz talking about it being Donald Trump's fault. And it was the pandemic's fault. Well, you've had almost 4 years to fix it. And what have you done? And so anyway, there's some thoughts there.
No, that's a really wonderful. I appreciate that. Yeah, Kamala Harris with her word salad or bland taco, as it's recently been revealed. Everything about Kamala Harris is scripted and badly scripted at that. No genuine experience, no genuine conversations. Like Donald Trump has a way of showcasing his personality, and some parts of his personality are better and some parts of his personality are worse. But the thing is, he actually has a personality, right? That's the real contrast between him and Kamala Harris, in my opinion. Them getting chips in a grocery store and a gas station had to be staged and filmed two
Yeah.
times. This sit down between her and Tim Walz, I only saw a clip of it. I don't know if that was going to be part of some major production, or maybe I just missed that it came out, maybe an ad or whatever of him saying, he likes to eat tacos, and her going, and he said a white guy taco, and she's like, "What is that? Tuna and mayo?" Like
Yeah, that's not
nobody
funny.
thinks that's not funny. That doesn't warrant a laugh. Much like everything else she talks about. I've been to the border. Like what
Right.
French toast are you laughing about? You haven't been to the bar. You're just lying, and the laughing is going right along with this manufactured campaign of joy. We're going to be in a country of misery, in my opinion, if we stay on this track of astronomical prices, no revenue happening with inside of our country, nobody bringing business back, no initiative, and they're looking at removing more initiative for business owners, for people that create, right? They just tax and tax and tax. And then if you make certain amount, then that needs to be shared with everybody else, because it's socialism, it's communism
Yeah.
is what they want for our country. And if you're just a regular person, listen, you need to get a little educated on communism, and then understand how great we really do have it in America and why that deserves to be protected. And we cannot just say, oh, it needs to be protected, and just expect these corrupt government elite type people to just be in charge and make sure that that's the checks and balance. We're in a different time, and Americans really need to find a way to get active, whether it's supporting someone who's going to be a good candidate, or stepping up and doing it yourself. Much like our military, sometimes you have to sign up to make a sacrifice in order to ensure that our children are going to have a safe America, because that's what's really on the line, in my opinion. Things are
Yeah,
becoming increasingly unsafe.
I'm with you 100%. And it's not about the personalities. And I had this conversation with my sister last night on the telephone. We were talking. She's not a Donald Trump fan,
Mhm.
but it's not about Donald Trump and it's not about Kamala Harris. It's a clear choice to me on the path that this country is going to go on. You're going to choose a path of socialism and communism, which much of the country wants now, which to me is mind boggling. When most of my life, I'm 58 years old, most of my life, our country has fought against communism. It was Korea. It was Vietnam. It was the Bay of Pigs. All of those things were to keep communism away from this hemisphere, and lives were lost because of it. And now so many people in America want communism. And I think that beneath sheep's clothing, we kind of started talking about that at the beginning of this hour. It's a great way to learn about what American communism is, because a lot of people think that it's the Soviet Union, and that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about something different. But to me, the choice is clear. Forget the personalities. Forget Kamala Harris. Forget Donald Trump. Which way do you want to go? It's really
Yeah, I agree. I really do. And I know I kind of touched on their personality. So you really do make a good point that it is going to be a policy. But I think deeper than personality, it's about character as well, as that Donald Trump has the ability to be a leader. And it does take a bit of personality in order to be able to drive home the point of, like, we're not messing around, or to make something lucrative. You have to have a certain air about you and a certain intelligence. And I think that when I look at something, when I'm comparing it to Kamala Harris's personality, I want to speak to her character, is that there's not a lot of substance there. She doesn't know enough. She's not bold enough. She's not a true leader, in my opinion. And so I think she's a clear loser in the choice for presidency. Her and Joe Biden have they had their 4 years. It's been terrible. Look at these countless street interviews asking about Kamala Harris. They say, "Oh, I'm voting for Kamala," and it's like, "What do you like about her policies?" Crickets. "Oh, well, I think they did a
She's a
good job."
girl. She's a
Yeah,
woman. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. They can't name one thing, and so that's deeply concerning. Is that we want to play into even more identity politics, and I think it's time that we really walk away from that as best we can. So I hope if we have any middle of the road voters, any Democrat voters that are feeling like things are not going so well, hey, reach out, ask whatever questions you have to, just so long as we're having an honest conversation. I really like how Vivek Ramaswamy speaks with people who adamantly disagree with what it is or seem to be very emotional. What a cool, calm, and collected individual he is, and I think he's going to have a bright future, or I really do hope so. So long as it's really at this point difficult to put, oh, I really like him, because next week it'll be like, well, it turns out he's got 5 bodies in his freezer, right? It seems like it happens every single time. But overall, from what I've seen from Vivek, I think he's got a great personality, and I think he's doing a great job within the Republican conservative movement. He was very strong as a presidential candidate, and I think some of the things he said was maybe a little overboard. But we're in a time where this whole, like, let's meet in the middle is not really working, because for years and years Republicans and conservatives keep meeting in the middle, but the left is not budging enough, so we keep moving further and further to the left. We really do need people that are willing to stand firm, whether you call it extremists or not, on both sides, because that's what will make things, in my opinion, truly in the middle. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would. And you mentioned something a few minutes ago that made me think of something, and that was the you were comparing and contrasting Kamala Harris' leadership and Donald Trump's leadership. And it reminded me of an article that I wrote back right after the assassination. I wrote it on July 15th. I probably wrote it on the 14th, but the name of it is An 8-Year Assault and One Missed Bullet was the name of the article. And really, if you want to know what leadership is look at what Donald Trump's instinctual what he did right after he almost got killed with a bullet. It hit his ear. He goes down and he gets up and throws his fist in the air and says, "Fight, fight, fight." And he's fighting for the people. And it was amazing to me that the people there, they didn't take off running. There wasn't a lot of fear because a leader stood up in the midst of that. And you see a lot of Democrats that are coming over right now to the Republican side because of that leadership that he showed right there. So many people look at that moment where Donald Trump stood up and said, "Fight, fight, fight." And that is what a leader does. It was an
Right.
instinct at that moment. He didn't have to be told what to do. At the very moment, regardless of what, he didn't know if more bullets were going to come flying at him, but he stood up with a fist and 3 times he said, "Fight, fight, fight." He's fighting for a people, a forgotten people, a people that have been left behind by the elitists and the administrative state of this country, the bureaucrats that have taken over and taken away the will and the power of the American people. And to me, that's what that was. After an 8-year assault on him and everything that he went through, from the Russian P tape and the Christopher Steele dossier that was bull. Yeah, he goes through 8 years of all of that and almost gets shot. And at that moment, he stands up and says, "Fight." To me, that is what a leader is. Kamala Harris, she would have never done that.
Came so natural, I think, because he's been fighting this entire time, fighting for his own freedoms that they're trying to desperately to rip away. His money, his life. They've literally done everything they possibly can to try and ruin him, and it's quite pathetic. And it's quite pathetic, the American people, honestly, that continue to fall for it. I just don't. There's a huge disconnect between me and someone who still watches mainstream media and thinks that there's an
Yeah.
ounce of truth in it. It's so difficult if you can't see through the lies. Like, again, just in comparison and contrast, like Trump coming out and speaking to the American people, his press conferences, or whether he's talking, whatever, you have to hear it straight from him, because you can't listen to blurbs of it, especially not through a CNN, a Fox, or any other network for that matter. Doesn't matter if they appear to be right leaning or left leaning or whatever. The clips are always going to be taken out of context, because headlines is what keeps people engaged. That's why we make headlines for our podcast, for our show. It's part of bringing attention. What happens thereafter, the difference between you and I, is that there's going to be truth once you get past the headline, and giving people the amount of respect to be able to tell them a story in full context, right? And to open it up and have a conversation. Nobody from CNN gives a crap what you think, or if you have any questions about the story. They don't care. That's why more and more people are turning to independent journalists, in my opinion, or independent media sources, whether it's, via podcast or America Out Loud, which is an awesome platform. It's just people working together. And I think the amount of podcasters right now really shows how sick the American people are. Like, we're the people that have woken up and go, you know what? If no one's going to give me the news, I'm going to search for it. And whatever I learn, I'm going to tell it to you. Or at least that's the case for me. And I feel like there's a lot of other, smaller podcasts, or podcasts in general, that were started for the same reason that I did. Right. So, Booker, all of those things said, I want to be respectful of your time and our audience's time. And for everybody that's joined us today, thank you so much for being here. If you don't mind, would you please repost this broadcast, because it can be found on the replay, and others can hear the message from Booker Scott and myself. If you have any comments or questions, drop it in the comment bubble, and Booker and I will try to get back with you. And questions about your local elections, and especially these particular Senate races, be sure to reach out if you would like to participate in sharing flyers, or get the flyers so you know the information to start those conversations, would be so important. Booker, again, just want to be super respectful of your time and our audience's time. I want to ask you, in closing, was there anything else that you might want to talk about? And then I have a final question for you.
Yeah, I do. We were talking about the local elections and county commissions, and you brought that up first. Something else about that are the non-party affiliated judges. A lot of people don't even look at that before they go vote. And I'm guilty of that as well in the past. It's very important for you to know those judges, because they're not going to say Republican, they're not going to say Democrat, and you know nothing about them other than their name. So make sure you go and get a voter guide somewhere, so that you know those non-party affiliated races that you're going to be voting for. Know who they are and know what they stand for, places, because that's also school boards. School boards are not party affiliated, and neither are judges. So it's really important that people understand exactly who these people are and what they stand for before you go vote for them. Or what happens sometimes, people don't even vote for anyone in that category because they don't know. So take the time to find out who these people are. It's really important as you see the things that are going on in this country. And so just take the time to find out that, and make sure that you get plugged in some way, somewhere, locally in your community, to try to make a difference, because that is what really makes a difference in our country.
No, that's beautiful. And so, like, that's just really excellent advice, because it's something that's not talked about, I don't think, ever. And I'm in political spaces all the time, right? So with everything you shared today, Booker, just thank you again for coming on and sharing some time with me and my audience. You've been just such an incredible friend, and truly a mentor to me in this realm of podcasting and being on air, right? And being able to deliver information. And you inspire me to just keep going and to remain true to who I am. And obviously, we share faith, right? So, I
Yeah.
wanted to, my last question for you in closing is, what is your favorite Bible scripture?
Well, my favorite. I love James 3.
Mhm.
That's one of my favorites, and I love the whole thing because when I was young, I was taught maybe it's about your tongue, but it's really talking about destroying someone's spirit with the words that you may say to someone. And if your listeners don't know exactly what that passage is, it is talking about how a boat can be steered with that small little rudder, and making the comparison to that small little rudder to our tongue. And even in a big storm, that ship could be steered that way. And and then it talks about the bit in a horse's mouth, and how that little bit can control that big strong animal. And that too is making a comparison to the tongue, and how that we can destroy someone's spirit with the things that we say. So encourage people, lift them up instead of beat them down, because I think that's what I take out of James 3. But I also was reading Daniel this morning, actually, and I love that book as well. And but anyway, James 3 is probably my favorite of all, because I think all of us can take that, whether you actually believe the Bible. I don't want to get into that conversation. I do, but maybe you don't. But you can take from James 3 and apply it to your life, regardless of your faith.
Definitely. I think the Bible is the best self-help book out there, to be honest with you. And, I always hope that people find their faith and find their belief. But as a believer, I try to leave space for people who are unknowing or maybe resistant to it, and say, well, whether you believe or not, it's still great advice. And I want to thank you for sharing what you did, because we're living in a very difficult time, I believe. And so using every opportunity to be able to say something positive about someone to lift them up is really important, and what's going to keep our communities going, right? I think that a lot of the division and quote unquote hate that we see portrayed via social media or mainstream media is much like Kamala Harris's campaign. It's
Yeah.
manufactured. We are designed to love, to
Yeah.
give people who have less than us, or who are in a difficult time, to be able to reach out. We're naturally caring people, and we shouldn't let people who are a part of the resistance to caring about one another control or dictate what it is that we do in life. So that's a beautiful note to end on. I want to
And
thank you again.
one more thing. Let
Yeah,
me
go ahead.
dovetail into something you just said, because
Mhm.
let's go back to the you're not a man enough to be a woman. The transgender that went from a woman back to a man, from a little boy named William to Maggie to William again. I think it's so important for us to be compassionate right now in the world that we're living in. As believers, as a Christian, I want to have empathy and compassion for those that are lost right now. And if I don't, then a guy like William may never become William again. And I think it's really important to have that compassion.
Yeah, very well said. And, praise God for William, honestly.
Absolutely. And thank you for having me on here, Katie. I'm really proud of what you're doing. I'm watching you grow, and it's great to see.
Oh, thank you so much, Booker. America Out Loud, that's been a great network of people that I've had the pleasure of meeting some of them, right? And so that's what it's all about, these special, wonderful connections that we make, these friendships that we build. Everything in life really is based on a relationship. It's just up to you whether you have a good relationship or a bad relationship with someone, right? Thank you to our audience. I'm so grateful for you. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for showing love. Thanks for your support. Thanks for watching. God bless, and I'll see you next time.